Okay, so here's today's agenda. We're going to talk about very briefly, because you're going to hear about AB 469 quite a bit. So we're just going to talk about this for a minute. I got 2 or 3 slides about that. And we're going to talk about getting WebGrants access, accessing and using reports. Sorry, I have a monitor here. I'm gonna fix this. Editing and matching GPAs, and then I'm going to leave you with some additional resources. Okay. All right. So what does AB 469 require? You're going to hear a lot about this today, right? You've probably heard quite a bit already, but AB 469 basically is new legislation that says, hey, local educational agencies, we need to ensure that all of your high school seniors are completing a financial aid application, a FAFSA or a California DREAM Act application, unless the senior has opted out. Now, I'm just going to make a point here, and we heard this previously. I think it's really important that we focus on, the fact that we have 2 applications in this state, and we don't want to overlook the DREAM Act application. Whenever you mention FAFSA, I kind of feel like the next words out of your mouth should be, or the California DREAM Act application, right? Because we don't want to stigmatize an application that so many students are already worried about filling out. So when you say FAFSA, just ding, 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 or California DREAM Act application. FAFSA night becomes FAFSA DREAM Act application night. That would be awesome. All right, why do we need this in the state? You guys know why we need this in the state, especially given the fact that we've had 2 really tough years with COVID. So you heard other speakers this morning saying a lot of students don't feel like they're college material, or they're going to be ineligible, or they just can't do it, or they feel like the applications are too difficult to complete. If you don't have a support system, that could be a really difficult thing to do. If you're the first generation who's going to college, that could be very difficult to figure out. College is too expensive, even with available aid. That's a perception. And oh, by the way, college is really expensive, even with available aid. So, that's a half truth. But if you don't apply for aid, you don't know what position you're in. College creates a deep, long-term debt. It can, but we want to fight this perception by saying if you apply, you have options, you can see what's available to you. And it's unsafe to share personal information or immigration status. So again, these are just some of the concerns that people have. By the way, I have a couple of coworkers standing by. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to type those into the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those in real time. Or, if we're getting a lot of questions about the same thing, I think Jennifer will jump in and say, hey, John, everyone's asking about this. And I'll say, okay, and then we'll try to answer it during the course of the actual webinar. Okay. So what is the opportunity that AB 469 presents? So obviously we've had 2 tough years, and this gives us kind of a chance to refocus on filling out the application, filling out financial aid applications after 2 really tough years. I think the other thing that it does is it encourages more direct interaction between schools and community organizations and the Student Aid Commission. If you read the actual bill itself, it says, hey, LEAs, you should be working with all of these community-based organizations, with all the college readiness organizations, with CSAC, with immigrant services on college campuses like DREAM Act centers. You really should be partnering with all of those people and more, and kind of go above and beyond where we've gone before. I think the other thing that this does is it gives schools and districts the opportunity to level set. Look, the great schools and the great districts are going to keep doing their thing, and they're going to do fine. We're not worried about them. But for the schools or the districts that have struggled a little bit, this is a chance to say, okay, now there's this new legislation, what can we do to up our game? All right, so we're going to talk about WebGrants. Yay! You didn't think we were going to talk about anything fun. Wrong. We're going to talk about WebGrants. You guys are good. Yes, I'm so excited. There's nothing. I rolled out of bed to talk about WebGrants this morning. All right, you're in luck. So now I'm going to tell you, this is going to be for those of you who have a lot of experience with this, it's going to be a little bit redundant. That's okay. We're going to assume that there's some new people here as well. So we'll go through it really quickly. What is WebGrants? Other than the fact that WebGrants is just plain fun, it's not. WebGrants is the system that we use to communicate with schools and with districts, right? So WebGrants allows you to look at information, to access information about students, to check the status of a particular student, to make changes, to force match students, and basically to see where a student is at, you know, along the way as they apply for financial aid, as they get matched, and you know, and as hopefully they're awarded a Cal Grant. That's WebGrants. All right. Now, here's a really important part, and I think with this new legislation, this is something we really need to do. Schools should and districts should absolutely expand who has WebGrants access, right? Because WebGrants is not just for the one person who, you know, who does this on the campus. Really, anyone can have WebGrants access on your campus, right? Anyone at your particular school or within your district can have WebGrants access. It's not that difficult. This is the question that we get all the time. I don't upload GPAs. That's not my job. So why do I need WebGrants access? Well, you need WebGrants access so you have the ability to jump in and look at the reports and see, you know, where the students are, you know, where are they in the process? As you track these students, you're going to have the ability to do things and change things that will allow them to have their applications actually go through. So that's important. We already have a counselor with WebGrants access. Okay, that's cool. You can have 10 people with WebGrants access. And I think with this legislation, it's really going to be all hands on deck. So we're going to go above and beyond who traditionally has had WebGrants access. And hopefully, you know, more people have it, because that will ensure that we're tracking these students better, and that will give them the best chance at success, right? Okay. So how do you get WebGrants access? I don't see the okay. Oh, there we go. I tricked myself. All right. We had some animation in there just to liven things up. How do you get WebGrants access? Here's how you get WebGrants access. You figure out who your system administrator is. So every campus typically has a system administrator, or sometimes two system administrators, you know, and then what you do is you start bringing them a coffee. Hey, how you doing? Hey, I brought you a coffee. Oh, well, thank you. That's really nice. And then you bring them a bagel or something. Wow, really? That's cool. And then after a couple of weeks of being super nice, you say, hey, can I get WebGrants access? Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that for you. All right. I don't think you have to go through all of that. You have a system administrator, and they can grant you WebGrants access. It is super easy to do, but you have to ensure that the school first has access. So if you're a brand new school, what do you do? You fill out the forms, the appropriate forms, you submit them to us, you wait a week, 10 days, 2 weeks if it's crazy busy, and then you'll get WebGrants access. So if you have any questions about that, you can contact school support and they can help you. All right. It's not difficult to get WebGrants access. You just have to fill out a couple forms, right? And you can submit those forms and you'll be granted WebGrants access. So this is what this looks like on a typical campus. You have an authorized official. So at a high school level, that's typically the principal, right? Or the director of the school. And that means that they're just signing off that they're going to be the authorized official. They don't really have access to the system. They don't use the system typically, but they kind of control the system. Then you have a system administrator or two. You can have up to 2 on any given campus. And then you have users or end users. And in theory, you could have as many of those as you need. So some schools have 2 or 3, some schools have 4 or 5. It really depends on your school and who's able to help in this process. All right, how are we doing? Do we have any questions? You guys can ask questions. I didn't want to say anything, but today it's, if you ask 2 questions, you get 1 free. A little special we're running, a little to encourage the questions. So jump in on the Q&A if you have any questions. How do I get added to WebGrants? Well, aside from the whole bring the coffee, bring the donut, bring the bagel, you find out who your system administrator is and you say, hey, can you add me? And then it's really easy. You're going to create a username and a password. You're going to complete, this additional information. There's security training that you have to do that CSAC has a version of. Your school district probably has a version of. And then once you go through those relatively easy steps, you're in. You have access. One more thing about user access is that if you're a system administrator, you can grant varying degrees of access. So there's some schools, I'll give you an example, that actually have, student helpers, and they can actually just, they make one screen available to them. They can look at, they can't change anything, but they can look at information, right? This is more typical on a college campus with someone working or interning in the financial aid department. But there's some big high schools and high school districts, that also have that. So, all right, you can contact, if you need to find out who your system administrator is, you can contact us and we can tell you. All right, now let's get into the good stuff. Using WebGrants reports. The main reason that you want WebGrants access is because you want to be able to look at reports. You want to be able to look at information that will help you determine, where is this kiddo at? Have they done an application? Did it go through successfully? Is it hung up? Is it pended in our system? Did it match? Ultimately, are they awarded? No, I know the legislation, talks a lot about we want students to successfully complete and submit an application, and we do. But the bigger picture is we want them to submit an application and we want that to match to a GPA, because those are the two things that need to happen for a student to be given Cal Grant consideration, right? So fill out the application, awesome. And schools and districts should be submitting, GPAs and uploading GPAs, as early as possible. So let's take a look at WebGrants information. So why do we want to look at these reports? So like I said, we can see who's applied with either the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act application. Remember, when we say FAFSA going forward, what are we going to say immediately after that? Or the CADA, right? If you want to use the acronym, or the California DREAM Act application. We can see whose application is not complete or pended in the system. So maybe there's an application that says no EFC, there's no expected family contribution. That's a red flag. Something going on with this. We need to see whose information might need to be edited or what we call matched or forced match. And honestly, that's the high school or the district's responsibility. So if you have these students who have a GPA floating around and an application floating around and they're not connecting, part of the thing that you need to do is to go in to WebGrants and say, I'm going to connect these two kiddos, either by changing information, editing information, or by looking in the system and then just matching them, or a combination of both of those things. You also can see who has an application but no corresponding GPA, which is super helpful. Students are like monarch butterflies, right? They fly into your school system, they fly out of your school system. You have new students coming into your schools all the time. You have students who are leaving. And sometimes because of that, you'll have students who fill out an application, but they don't have a GPA, or we're not sure that they have a GPA from their previous school or district. We have reports that can help you with that. All right, so accessing WebGrants reports. This is not a very good slide, but this kind of gives you the idea, right? So when you go into WebGrants, you go under Cal Grant and you drop down to data transfer, because that makes perfect sense, right? You want reports and you go to, no, it doesn't make any sense, but that's what you do. You go into where it says data transfer, you click on that, then you go to report download, and then you're going to be, when you see that drop down, you're going to be able to see all the reports that are available to you. So, and some of these reports, because they run on an ongoing basis, you're going to see more than one, right? You're going to see every time it's been run. You're going to look at probably the most recent. So here's what it looks like at San Gabriel High School. I went to San Gabriel High School for a couple of years. All right, go Matadors. And if you look at the report, you can see some different things. Your Cal Grant awardees, financial application, no GPA. We're going to talk about that. Excuse me. GPA summary, student summary report and the non-SSN GPA status report. Really, there's only a couple of reports that you're going to use on a really regular basis to help determine if a student has an application that they've done and if a student has matched. And this is kind of how you get there, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so like I said, really there's two main reports that we can focus on. So when you get WebGrants Access, if you don't have it now, right? Because after today, the first thing you're going to do is find out who your system administrator is, and you're going to say, hey, I can help with this process. I can go in and I can look at these reports and I can contact these kiddos and, and I can help match the students and I can help edit information. So once you have WebGrants Access, you're going to go in and you're going to look at all the different reports that you have, but you're going to say, which ones do I really need? And the ones you probably really need to focus on are the non-SSN GPA status report and the student summary report. Now, the non-SSN GPA status report is really the one that you need to look at to see who needs to be matched and who's not matching, etc. But we're going to take a look at these different reports and kind of show you what they look like. And again, we're talking about using this information to track and to identify students who need additional help, which is the point. So when you have information, you have power. This is like, what's the line from the Spider-Man movie? With great power comes great responsibility. With WebGrants comes great responsibility to track these students, figure out where they're at, and make a determination as to what we need to do to make sure that application actually goes through. All right, thank you, Marvel. I'm stealing your line. Someone's going to sue me, I feel like. All right, so this is what the student summary report looks like. That's sexy, right? That's fun. It's like, oh my God, I got to look at that. Yes, you do. So it has a lot of information. Here's what we want to look at. Yeah, you notice a couple things are circled. So one of them says method. That's how the GPA was uploaded. Was it part of a batch? So there's a batch ID, and a batch means a bunch of them GPAs were uploaded at one time, or was it added individually? Because you have the ability to do that. So you can, if you do a big upload and then you have students, you go, oh, we missed little Johnny, darn it. All right, we're going to upload little Johnny individually. You can do that. The application status. So yes, late, no ESC, none, right? So we have some things. If it's late, it means it's submitted after the deadline. Hopefully you don't have too many of those. No ESC means it's somehow incomplete. So it could be, for example, that it's missing a parent's signature, or it's just not complete, because if an application doesn't have an ESC, then it's not going to process. It's hung up in the system. That kiddo is in a holding pattern. So we want to make sure that we figure out what's going on with those applications. And obviously, if it says none, they haven't done it yet. Remember, this isn't real time when you look at the reports. Everything gets updated every week. Some things get updated on a really regular basis. But when you look at a report, you're not looking at up to the date information. So it might be a week or 10 days before all those things get updated and they populate into our system. All right. And then the last one is awarded. Are they awarded? Yes or no? That's pretty easy, right? You can also see the total students and the total students who have matched, how many of those have been awarded. So there's good information here. Now, one thing that's kind of weird, like you might look at this report and there'd be someone who graduated a long time ago. Why are they on this report? Because this particular report will show you all the high school grads who list your school on their financial aid application, regardless of when they graduated. FYI. All right, is that clear? You guys have questions? I got Adrian standing by. He's got his feet up on the desk and he's eating chocolate and streaming Netflix. He's not doing anything. So ask the questions while you can. All right, here's the next report we're going to look at. This is the non-SSN GPA status report. All right, again, wow, John, that's super cool. I could look at that all day. No one wants to look at this all day. But let's take a look and see what's important here, right? So this is, I said there's two main reports. This is the second one. And here's where we can determine if the student has matched or if they're unmatched or if there's no application. So remember, when you upload GPAs, what happens to those GPAs? I don't know. They're up there. They're floating around in cyberspace, right? GPAs, GPAs, GPAs. When a student does an application, what happens? It's floating around in cyberspace. So this GPA is trying to connect with this application based on certain data elements. Most importantly, the name, address, date of birth, school code, things like that. And so we want to make sure that that's what's happening. And when they connect, right, that's a match. It's like match.com. Oh, hello, hello. Oh, I love you. And then a little baby Cal Grant is born. That's not how it works. I'm just throwing that out there. But we want these two things to match. When the GPA connects with the application, that means that they're matched and they will process for Cal Grant consideration. If they're not matched, we have to figure out why. And we probably have to either edit information or go in and kind of force match the information. Okay, so that's what this report looks like. That's the important information. Okay, all right, cool. Let's keep going. Now, the last report I want to talk about is the financial application no GPA. And we should look at this one occasionally because this is going to show you students who have done an application, but there's no corresponding GPA. It could be for a lot of reasons. It could be because no GPA was actually uploaded. It happens. It could be that in that particular batch, there was a problem. It could be, who knows what, a student who came into your school district late and they don't have a GPA. Maybe they have one from the previous school district. Maybe they don't. We don't know. But at least this way you can identify them. So this financial application no GPA is a good report to look at periodically, especially if you have a student that says, I don't know what's going on. I haven't gotten any confirmation. What's going on? You can pull this up and say, for some reason you don't have a GPA on file. We can check that, especially if your district uploads GPAs. And the districts are perfect. They never make mistakes. I know that. Never. It's unbelievable. Maybe once in a while. So you want to just check to make sure that there wasn't an issue with the GPA upload. All right. Are we good? All right. Now, speaking of reports, there's a couple things. So first of all, I want to tell you that here at CSAC, we are working on trying to provide you some enhanced reports. And we've made some progress with the reports. They're not quite as clunky as they used to be. They still can be a little clunky, but there's a lot of good information there. And we eliminated some reports that had a lot of redundancy. But what we're trying to do now with this new legislation is to come up with a report that is just a snapshot of everything you need to look at, number one. And the second thing that we really want to make sure happens is you can easily download that information so you can plug it into an Excel spreadsheet and then manipulate that data or keep track of that data. That's been the one thing, that's been the one ask from counselors and districts for a long time. It's like, I can see the information, but there's no super easy way just to click something and have it, create a file that I can immediately start using. So that's been a little bit of an issue. So we know that, and we're working on creating something that is more useful for you. All right. If you have suggestions, contact us and say, CSAC, come on, man, get it together. Here's what would be helpful for me. The other thing that we do currently have is we have a data dashboard. So if you go onto the website, the CSAC website, you don't need WebGrants for this. You can, look at this information for your particular school, and it will show you, I think, 3 years worth of the previous data, where you are at any given time, total applications by county or by high school. So you can look at that. If you want to go there, you can check out that information. That's one other resource that you can use. All right, so let's talk about the timing of all of this. Now, you guys can upload GPAs very, very early, and you should. So when that opens up, you should upload GPAs really early. And then remember that when a student fills out a FAFSA, that takes about 3 to 5 days to process. So it means it's going to take a few days before that information processes through, right? And then it's going to take a little bit of time for that information to populate into WebGrants so we can actually see it. Now the CADA, which is the California Dream Act application, just to remind you, we use that acronym, is proprietary to CSAC. That's our application. So that populates almost immediately. You know, if a student fills out a Dream Act application, you know, we can see it right away or almost right away. So that's a little bit different. And we can then use that information and we'll dump it into the system as well, and you'll be able to see it. So remember, October 1st is the first day to complete an application. Students can start completing applications October 1st, and if they do, then you should start seeing things in early November. That's the best time. You know, the first week in November is when you should really start looking at your reports, because that's when you're going to have enough information and data to actually do something. You know, prior to that, you know, maybe in late October, you're going to see some things, but I suggest beginning of November, you start looking at these reports every week, and then you could sort of determine who needs help. The other thing that's really important is shift the focus for the applications. Let's stop talking about the March 2nd deadline. I don't even like saying March 2nd. Let's talk about October 1st and make everything revolve around October 1st. So that way students fill out their applications really early. You know that if a student fills out an application in the first part of October, they'll know in November if they have a Cal Grant and what Cal Grant they have and how much money they're going to get. And while they won't have all the financial aid they're going to receive, if they know they're going to get a Cal Grant, one, I think a lot of times they're super motivated to be thinking about college. And two, it allows them to start processing where they might want to go to college. All right. So I'm going to just take a little pause here. So I'm going to give you a quick tip, because this happens all the time, and I think it's important that we point it out. Remember, we said sometimes you're looking at the reports and you see no EFC. One of the reasons that can happen is you have a student who's a FAFSA filer, but their parents don't have Social Security cards, which means they can't create an electronic FSA, right? So what that means is if they can't create an electronic FSA, you know, one parent has to do it, the student will have to print out that paper parent signature page, which is, you know, I mean, it's fine, it works. The problem with it, the issue with it, is that it takes forever to process. So your FAFSA filer who has to mail off that paper signature page, sometimes they're going to show as no EFC. And that means that their application technically isn't complete until the paper signature page processes. And this is it's an issue. The feds, they say, oh no, 2 to 3 weeks, we're good. No, not 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes 2 to 3 months is more likely. It's a real issue. So, you know, one, if possible, try to identify those students who have to fill out a FAFSA, but they also have to do the paper signature page if possible. And, you know, remind them, I mean, just remind all your students, if you have to mail anything, let's do your application super early, because it takes a long time to process. Until it processes, there's no EFC. And I suggest that hopefully they have access to a printer, which is another challenge. I suggest that they print out a second one and write the date of when they mailed the original one. And, you know, we've just had lots of problems with this. So I'm drawing your attention to it because it's a thing. The best advice I can give you is to have those kiddos do their application really early so they can mail this really early. Sometimes even mail a second one if necessary, if they haven't heard anything in 3 or 4 weeks, because you can call and say, hey, have you guys processed my, right? And they're going to say, nope, not yet. So we want to make sure that we get through this as painlessly as possible. Okay, so just some basic things. How do we improve in general completion rates for applications? Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir. You guys do this every day. You're in the trenches. I totally understand that. So this is information. None of this is going to be brand new to you, but we're going to throw it out there. So one, I think it's really important to focus on October 1st. Start everything early. Start everything early. Your financial aid nights, your cash for college nights. I'll come out to your schools and do a presentation, right? October 1st, I'll be there. So we want to make sure that we're starting this process really early for a lot of different reasons. One, it gets students motivated once they know they're going to get a Cal Grant. Two, if there's any kind of problem, we can fix it. We have lots of time. We're not waiting to the last minute. Three, it's just going to help you with those numbers, right? If we do the vast majority of the students early on, then we can really work with the students, who have the challenges. So that's just my suggestion. So, and make sure that every week we're identifying the students who have completed a FAFSA or a DREAM Act application. Celebrate that on your campus. There are some schools that do some phenomenal things around the students who finish the application. And, a lot of things that don't even cost a lot of money, but they recognize those students, and I think that's cool. Use reports beginning in November to check the student status. So remember, October 1st is when you can start completing a financial aid application. Beginning in early November, those reports are going to have some meaning because that information is going to populate down. Proactively follow up with individual students. We know you're doing that, but we put it on the list anyway. Check for students who are hung up in the application process. So this is really important. When you're seeing the no EFCs or you're seeing the students who have not matched, those are the ones we need to try to go in and fix right away. And remember, CSAC is there for you. You can contact, have the student contact student support and say, I don't know what's going on. They're fantastic. You guys can contact school support. They're fantastic. We're here to help you, right? So, as you go through these lists and if you're having difficulty with a student or you're seeing some kind of a problem, contact us. That's what we do. That's what we're here for. So edit GPA information to match GPAs to the applications. Remember, you can edit information and you can match information. And a lot of times those two things go hand in hand. Okay, so, and then I'm going to say this again. I know I'm on my soapbox. I'm going to stand on my soapbox. I'm now 4 inches taller. I'm on this soapbox and I'm going to remind you, always please promote both the FAFSA and the California DREAM Act application. In the state of California, we have 2 applications. They're equally important. They just serve a different cohort of students. And we're doing a disservice to our undocumented students if we aren't talking about the California DREAM Act application in the same breath that we're mentioning FAFSA. So when you're doing your financial aid nights, when you're sending out email blasts, when you're posting things on your websites, when you're talking to students and parents, whatever it is you're doing, FAFSA or California DREAM Act application, let's not stigmatize the CADA, right? Okay, I'm off my soapbox. All right, so let's talk about matching and editing. Remember I said there's 2 things that you guys can do that are really helpful in this process. So matching and editing, those are the 2 things you can do. How do I know when to match and edit? Well, now you're going to have WebGrants Access. Now you can look at the reports that I showed you. Now you can determine which students are hung up in the process. And you can then, start fixing the problems if they're not matching. By the way, what is the number one reason that students don't match in the system, right? Name. 1,000 times when students aren't matching, 996 times it's because of the name, right? So either because you upload a GPA with a name and the students complete an application with a name. So what that means is if the GPA says John Gomez Trujillo, but the student just fills out the application with John Gomez, that might not match. It might not match. If it's hyphenated on one end and not hyphenated somewhere else, it might not match, right? If the student has a middle name that they're throwing in there that looks like the first last name, it's not going to match. Or my favorite is when the student puts their nickname on the Come on. They put their nickname on the application, right? You upload the GPA with the correct name and they fill out their application and they go, my name is Skippy. No, Skippy. No, don't do it. Stop. No, but everyone, we don't care. Put your right name on there so you guys can match up. All right. Matching and editing. So matching basically means that you can match the GPA information to the financial aid application information. Until that information matches up, they're not going to process for Cal Grant consideration, right? And they might have other issues. Editing means you can overwrite demographic information that's been submitted in the GPA upload. So maybe you uploaded the information and you go, oh, you know what? That GPA is not correct. I can fix that, right? We have a period of time where you can go in and edit the information. Or the basic demographic information isn't correct. Or the name wasn't exactly right on the GPA upload. A whole host of things that you can go in there and fix. So that's editing. Sometimes we edit first and then we try to match. Sometimes we go in and we just match. So we're going to take a look. Okay. So here's just a lot of information. I'm not going to read this whole thing, as exciting as that would be, but why should schools match their students' GPA records to financial aid applications? Because like I said, if it's not matched, it's not going to process. So that is why we need to ensure that that happens. When can schools edit and match their students' unmatched GPA records? So beginning in October, you can begin to edit and match any unmatched GPA, right? And remember, we're going to look at that non-SSN GPA report. Why would a GPA record not match to a financial aid application? Because this says Johnny and this says Skippy. Come on, Skippy. Come on, man. Knock it off. So usually it's the name. It's the name. Sometimes it's the address as well. Maybe the date of birth. You're going to find this hard to believe. I'm going to blow your minds. So this is crazy. Sometimes students make mistakes. What? It's true. So sometimes they put erroneous information on the application because they're doing it too quickly, and that's why it doesn't match. So everything's fixable. That's the good news, especially if we start early in the process. All right. Now, some of you are saying, man, there's nothing I'd rather do than really do a deep dive into GPA reports and matching and that whole process. Where can I go, John? Where can I find more information? I'm glad you asked. So we've developed a lot of training videos, and we have a YouTube training video that is very specific to GPA matching and all the different reports, right? We also have weekly live webinars that we do, and this is one of them that we do. I don't know when we're doing it next, but typically as we get close to the October 1st deadline, we ramp up and we do that one kind of on an ongoing basis. But if you want additional information, excuse me, go look at the YouTube training video that we did. It's relatively short, but it walks you through the entire process. So that's cool. And what else you get? Invite some friends over Friday night. You don't have to binge watch, Amazon Prime or Netflix or Hulu. No, come on. Hey, what are we watching tonight? Bring the popcorn, GPA matching and editing. Oh, you're going to make a lot of new friends that way. All right. Okay, so that's basically the bulk of the information about the reports and the matching. I'm going to leave you with some additional resources and our contact information. Remember, I gave you my email address earlier. Jennifer has it as well, so she might throw it there into the chat. Oh, she did. Oh, man, that was quick. She's on it. All right. So we're just going to leave you with some additional resources. You can continue to ask questions. Please feel free to do so. So I think that what's going to happen with this new legislation is that, the idea here is not to shame a school or a school district because their numbers are lower than they would like them to be. That is not the intent. But I will say with this new emphasis on completing financial aid applications, there's going to be a lot of information out there, and it's going to be there's going to be a lot of transparency about the information that's out there, and the California Department of Education is going to hopefully provide us with more current information so we can update things on a weekly basis. So one of the things that we have is this race to submit dashboard. You don't need WebGrants Access for this. You can simply go onto our website. And this is going to show you the number of applications that have been submitted. And I think more importantly, the number of applications that have been submitted that have matched with a GPA. So you can go in there and check your school against other schools. You can check all the schools in your district to see where you guys rank, right? If you're number one, you might want to call the school down the road and say, hey, I don't know if you saw, but we're number one. I'm just saying, we're number one. No big deal, whatever. Click. All right. You can check to see where you are in terms of the size of the school. So we break this down into, the total population of the school. So, big schools over, I think it's 500 students, 1,000 students. And then we have under 50, whatever. So we rank by the size of the school as well. So you can check out that information. It is on our website. All right. Now, I am part of the CSAC Outreach and Training Unit. There aren't a lot of us, but we do a lot of stuff. So we're available. If you're doing a virtual training and you want someone from CSAC there to answer questions or to present or to do part of the training, we can do that. We can travel again, yay. So hopefully that doesn't change, but right now we can travel. So if you're doing, in-person trainings or financial aid nights and you'd like someone from CSAC to be there, especially, the big district events, we're happy to try to do that. If your school is in the greater Sacramento area, then it's super easy. If you're outside the area, then we just have to look at the date and see if we can attend. We have scheduled workshops. So I actually run they used to be called the high school counselor workshops. Now they're called the statewide annual financial aid workshop. Same thing. We're going to be doing those in person again this year, beginning in August. And we're going to talk about lots of information that, you guys need, all the updated legislation and financial aid programs, etc. So we'll be out and about doing that. By the way, if you'd like to host a workshop, please contact me. We can work something out. We can also provide training materials, etc. So that's who we are. That's what we do. We've really expanded our Cash for College numbers and our outreach. Cash for College really continues to play a critical role in getting these students involved and filling out applications. So we've been doing them virtually, which is not quite the same, but we're going to start now doing in-person events. And Cash for College events are just fantastic because it's really one of the most tangible things you can do. When you have students show up with their parents, right? Sometimes the whole family shows up and they can sit down with someone who knows what they're talking about, and they can, sit there for an hour. And when they leave, they've completed the application. They've completed the FAFSA. They've completed the DREAM Act application. They've completed the Chafee grant application. You see really tangible results. And so it's important to host these events whenever possible. If we can be there, we'll be there. If you're doing it virtually, we can assist. Okay. One of the things we're going to do that we're excited about is we're going to create some training materials. So these would be short PowerPoint presentations and videos that we're going to make available to high schools. And the intent of these materials is really for peer-to-peer outreach. In other words, we know if a high school senior stands up, one of your student leaders, is talking to other students, that's much more impactful than, I mean, I'm fantastic, right? I'm super knowledgeable, I'm fun, I'm friendly. But when I start talking to a group of high schoolers, they're like, oh my God, this guy, okay. But when a high school student stands up and talks to their peers, I think it's much more engaging. So we're going to create some materials that we're going to provide to you, and you can use this for your student leaders, your AVID students, your student government leaders, anyone who wants to be involved, and do these little short presentations for seniors talking about financial aid, talking about the importance of filling out a financial aid application. So hopefully you're signed up for our listserv, our emails, and we'll have more information about that. All right. Now, someone asked about getting this presentation that we're doing today. We'll put together, so Jennifer, we'll figure that out, but we'll put together a PDF of this, and hopefully we'll send it out to whoever wants it. If you contact us at the, Adrian, maybe you could write the outreach and training email again. If you contact us at that email, we'll send it to you directly. But here's a list of all the outreach and training things that we do and the corresponding links, so you can have that information. I just mentioned our listserv. Hey, we know you don't get enough emails, and we're here to help. So sign up for CSAC emails. It's really easy. Go onto the website, and then you'll see at the very bottom where it says subscribe to CSAC important updates. Sign up for those. You can get them very specific to what you want. I'm in a high school. I want this information, this information, this information. Great. You can sign up. It's really quick and easy. Highly recommend that you're getting our emails. Anytime there's a new presentation or we're going to start a new series of workshops, you're going to get that information. All right, engage with us on social media. We're like the cool kids now because we have everything. You know, when I started at CSAC, it was, and I say this with all due respect, not great. Our social media was not great, but it's much improved. We have dedicated staff now dealing with our social media. If you want to connect with me on social media, I'll put in my MySpace page information. Super, I'm kidding, I don't have that. But I'm old enough to have it. So if you want to engage with us on social media, here's the information. Remember, WebGrants for students. We want to make sure that students are completing this. This is their portal for state aid. FAFSA filers, you know, they wait about a week, then they can go and do it. Brand new DREAM Act application filers, this is kind of an automatic part of the process. So when they're filling out the DREAM Act application, they're creating the same password and login information for WebGrants for students. If you have any questions about that, contact school support or have the student contact student support. But you have to put this on your radar, right? Students absolutely have to have a WebGrants for Students account. There's things that they need to do to get their Cal grant. So we want to make sure that they're doing this, and this is part of the process. We have social media toolkits. If you go onto the website, we have a lot of graphics. We have some templates that you can use for emails. We have some things that you can use for your social media. You can put on your website. Check that out. Questions? Woo! We finished just in time. So you can continue to ask questions or you can email us. And I just want to say thank you guys for attending. I hope that you found some of this information to be valuable. And if you want to contact school support, there's the phone number and the email. I gave you guys my email previously. If you have any questions about our outreach that we do, or you want to contact us about, you know, being at an event or being at a virtual event, we can do that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks you guys for being here. Thanks for being part of this, you know, really important summit that's done every year now. And this is our the third year. So we're obviously at CSAC, we're heavily involved in this process. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, you got another minute or two to ask your questions. If you're just tired of me and you're done, you can move on to whatever's next. But that's it. Jennifer, do you have anything you want to add?
So thank you so much for sharing, John, all of your expertise to all our participants this morning. Please know that all the presentation materials are or will be available on said event platform. The recording will also be posted there no later than tomorrow. We're also welcome to use, you know, the said to provide feedback so we can continue to provide support and any type of you know, continuation support, implementing upcoming applications, completion requirement. I also understand that if you still have additional questions, just go ahead and, like John said, email. And also for any text, you can email me as well. But right now we are gonna head back to the main room where we were at, and we'll continue the vote assembly from there. But if you still have any questions, I'll stay behind maybe another minute or so. But other than that, you are all welcome to leave. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you being here, and enjoy the rest of today and the other sessions and tomorrow as well. If you have any last minute questions, feel free to ask those. John, can I wear white after Labor Day? Absolutely. You can wear whatever you want. That's just an example of a question. I don't know. You guys can ask. You can ask whatever you want. All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the kind comments. The checks in the mail. $5 a comment. Man, okay. I can afford it. I'm good. Oh, come on, Jack. Jack's killing me with the Labor Day. All right. Off-white, egg white. Okay. Remember, you have my email. Feel free to email me. You can also email our school support if you have any questions that are specific to the information that was provided here. And there's the email again. Feel free, reach out. Especially if you want to talk about any outreach that we're able to do with you, we're happy to do that. If you have any questions about the PowerPoint today that we presented, or about any of the information we presented, I'm happy to answer those questions or to facilitate and connect you with the right person at CSAC to help you out. All right, Jennifer, we did it.